Please stand and sing the first and last verse of the hymn found on page 608 in the hymnal.
A reading from 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verses 58 through 60. And Judah said, Arm yourselves and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us and our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people and our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of God is in heaven, so let him do.
On December 6, 1915, an anonymous poem titled In Flanders Fields was published in the magazine Punch. Written by John McCrae, a Canadian medical officer, during the Second Battle of Ypres, it became the best-known poem of the First World War, its images becoming part of the collective memory of the war. The poem's influence is perpetuated in the annual Festival of Remembrance, with its numerous poppies and the selling of other paper poppies as a means of raising charitable funds for war disabled.
In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who died, we shall not sleep. The poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. For the last 98 years, in commemoration of the end of the First World War, the war to end all wars, on November 11th, 1918, we have celebrated Veterans Day. It is a day to put aside our selfish concerns and remember the generations of veterans of America's wars, both at home and abroad. It is perhaps particularly important for us to pause and reflect on this November 11th, as we recover together from one of the ugliest and most divisive elections in our nation's history. In 1800, newly elected President Thomas Jefferson, after a similarly tumultuous and angry election, told Americans, "We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists." And he was right. Today, we are all Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Americans. We must be knit together in this work. The eyes of all people are upon us. Traditionally, church bells have tolled at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month across the country, as they will here today at 11 o'clock this morning, in memory of the brave men and women who have sustained our nation and liberty in times of war and peace. Theodore Roosevelt, himself a veteran, once said, "The first requisite of a good citizen in this republic of ours is that he shall be able and willing to pull his own weight." America's veterans have surely met this test. When you hear the Westminster bell toll today, please observe a moment of silence in their honor. The trees on Memorial Walkway, planted in memory of Westminster's First World War fallen, are fitting monuments to our veterans, and they bring to mind a now forgotten symbol of what they and other veterans fought for, a symbol once central to the American political conscience, the Liberty Tree. During the Revolution and well into the 19th century, the Liberty Tree stood for the rights of Englishmen, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that are the birthright of all Americans. Beginning in 1765, a group of Boston patriots resisting what they saw as a rising tide of British oppression gathered under an enormous American elm at the corners of Essex and Orange Streets in Boston. The tree, which had already been recognized by the Massachusetts General Court in 1646 as the first public shade tree and meeting place in America, was by far the largest elm in a stately grove of elms in the center of the city. These Sons of Liberty met to debate resistance to the Stamp Act, and the tree soon became a symbol of their struggle and of the rights they were defending. Paul Revere, a respected silversmith before he became more famous as a horseman, was commissioned to design a medal for the tree as its centerpiece for each member to wear proudly. When the Stamp Act was repealed, lanterns hung from the branches of the Liberty Tree in celebration. But the Act's repeal did not end British efforts to bring the colonies to heel, and the Liberty Tree and the Sons of Liberty remained central to the struggle that followed. As resistance to British rule spread, Liberty trees appeared in hundreds of American towns. And in those towns without a noble enough tree and a grand enough spot to satisfy the purpose, Liberty poles sprouted up. By 1774, Liberty trees throughout the colonies had become gathering places, in which was launched a great movement to overthrow tyranny and establish the rights of man as the secular faith of a new nation. It was from beneath Liberty trees that the Declaration of Independence was read, and it was from Liberty trees that George III was hanged in effigy. So powerful and universal was the Liberty Tree as a symbol that it appeared on American battle flags, most often in a People's War on militia flags at places like Bunker Hill, Long Island, and Monmouth. The British recognized the importance of Liberty trees to the colonials and were zealous in destroying them. British redcoats cut them down wherever they went. American bluecoats just as quickly replanted them. The Boston Liberty Tree survived only until 1775, when General Gage ordered it cut down as the British evacuated the city. The huge tree was remembered to have yielded 14 cords of wood, which the British took with them and consumed in their winter fires. The Charleston, South Carolina tree was also cut down when the British occupied that city, and they went so far as to burn the stump to the ground. But they failed to kill the tree, and it soon grew back. A new shoot was presented to Thomas Jefferson. So universal was the Liberty Tree that in 1775, Thomas Paine, a revolutionary on two continents, wrote a poem called The Liberty Tree that was set to music and was popular particularly among American soldiers during the war. Here is that song in part. In chariot of light from the regions of day, the goddess of liberty came. 10,000 celestials directed her way, and hither conducted the dame. A fair budding branch from the gardens above, where millions with millions agree, she brought in her hand as a pledge of her love, and the plant she named Liberty Tree. The poem is a fine statement of our noblest ideals. There is in Paine's lyric a reference to a divine plan. American history students will recall Winthrop's City Upon a Hill, and to the fear that tyrannical powers will cut down the liberty tree if we neglect the trumpet of arms in its defense. At the center of the song is the notion that America embraces an egalitarian spirit in which names and distinctions have no importance, where free men, like brothers, agree, and where one spirit, one friendship, unites all Americans. The Liberty Tree itself, a fair budding branch from the gardens above, a celestial exotic, a gift from the goddess of liberty, is the American embodiment of those ideals. It is fitting that we remember this song today in honor of all American patriots. There is a sense of hope and a watchful anxiety attached to the symbol of the Liberty Tree. During the Revolution, whenever possible, American elms, because of the Boston tree, were chosen as liberty trees. New Haven, the elm city, surrounded its town green with them at this time. American elms were the most popular shade trees in America for generations until Dutch elm disease killed the tree across the country, almost to the point of extinction. Should the death of the trees be read as a metaphor for our own struggles in defense of liberty, the long, too often delayed effort to extend its blessings and grace to all Americans? Is the American elm so nearly lost, thus a reminder of the truth, as John Philpott Curran wrote, the condition upon which God hath given liberty to man is eternal vigilance, which condition if he break, servitude is at once the consequence of his crime and the punishment of his guilt. But American elms survive, here and there, and in recent years scientists have succeeded in producing disease-resistant varieties, one of which is called the American Liberty Elm. And once again, perhaps true liberty trees will dominate the American landscape. Until that time, I invite you to follow Henry David Thoreau's guidance. In America, every tree is a living liberty pole on which thousands of bright flags are waving. This sense of trial and determined optimism is revealed in the story of one remarkable liberty tree. This tree, a tulip poplar, not an elm, that until its death was the largest known such tree in America. It was over 100 feet tall, and its branches spread 60 feet wide, and it stood in Annapolis, Maryland, for almost 400 years, until it had to be taken down in 1999. It was Annapolis' liberty tree during the Revolution, and at the conclusion of the war, hundreds of celebratory lanterns hung from its branches. The tree embraced the people of Maryland in its arms as the Constitution was read aloud for the first time in that state. The Marquis de Lafayette, among many others during its long life, spoke beneath it in 1824, surely reminded of the Revolution in his own country that adopted both American idealism and the Liberty Tree symbol. Some 60,000 Liberty trees were planted in France during that revolution. The Annapolis tree weathered great storms, survived a fire and an explosion of gunpowder in its trunk during the War of 1812, and sheltered under its boughs not only patriots during the Revolution, but also Union soldiers during the Civil War and doughboys in training for the First World War. Before the tree was removed, the state of Maryland collected over 10,000 seeds, but could only grow, fittingly enough, 14 new saplings. One was planted near the spot of the original tree, and 12 were sent as gifts to Maryland's Revolutionary sisters. Connecticut's Liberty Tree, sapling from that tree, was planted in Hartford's Bushnell Park, not far from a first-generation descendant of our state's famed charter oak. But that's another story. The 14th sapling, a gift to the federal government, was planted on the White House lawn. And so the Annapolis Liberty Tree, the last such link to the Revolution, lives on. While we honor America's veterans in the image of the Liberty Tree, we must remind ourselves that the burden of eternal vigilance does not fall upon their shoulders alone. When asked at the conclusion of the Constitutional Convention what kind of government the founders had brought, Benjamin Franklin answered, "A republic, if you can keep it." How many of you have or have recently read the Declaration of Independence, or the Bill of Rights, the Gettysburg Address, or the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments? or the 19th and 26th Amendments? Most people can reasonably come close to reciting the First and Second Amendments, but what of the Fourth or the Fifth? You heard some of these this past Tuesday, but how many do you really know? These documents are not dead letters, but the living, sacred writings of our secular faith, the very things the Liberty Tree stands for. One historian has even suggested that the Liberty Tree replace Uncle Sam, or even the venerable bald eagle, as the compelling symbol of American identity. If you haven't read this Catechism of American Liberty, or you haven't read it recently, you should, especially in light of recent events. I can think of no greater tribute to America's veterans than to take a moment, sit under your own Liberty Tree, and read them each year on Veterans Day. In 1787, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and of tyrants. It is its natural manure." Jefferson knew well the meaning of the Liberty Tree, and he would understand very well the sacrifices our veterans have been called upon to make for us. They have paid the price of the eternal vigilance that preserves our liberty. This is a great debt owed by all of us to all of them. And so we acknowledge on this day, Veterans Day, those Americans who have answered the trumpet of arms in defense of our Liberty Tree. Thank you.
George Washington, expressing the hopes of all veterans in a letter to the Marquis de Lafayette on his retirement from the United States Army February 1st, 1784. I have become a private citizen on the banks of the Potomac, and under the shadow of my own vine and my own fig tree, free from the bustle of a camp and the busy scenes of public life, I am solacing with myself with those tranquil enjoyments. I am not only retired from all public employments, but I am retiring within myself, and shall be able to view the solitary walk and tread the paths of private life with heartfelt satisfaction. Envious of none, I am determined to be pleased with all, and this, my dear friend, being the order of my march, I will move gently down the stream of life until I sleep with my fathers.